So there we had a look at three really great flash mobs or happenings that were done by the Improv Everywhere group. First, we had Look Up More. This was to get people looking off of their phones and actually looking up around them in the sky, around the city and so forth, and be more aware of their surroundings. And if those who actually did look up, then they were surprised by this fantastic, funny display of synchronized dancing going on. And the next one with the Central Station Freeze, this is one that you may have seen replicated a number of times, whereby the situation in which the participants find themselves are basically divided by two different player groups. We have the one player group that knows what's happening and going on, and they're frozen, and then they're on part of that installation, part of that art instance. And there are the other people who are now somehow teleported out of their status quo of the normal everyday grind, and all of a sudden it's as if half of the population is stuck in some kind of time freeze, and they're able to move around and witness and experience that experience as if it was completely normal in many ways. And yet, because it's not, they're actually participating in this exhibition themselves. And that is the really interesting part about these different happenings, is the participants who are participating are having as much fun as those who are witnessing or watching said flash mob or said happening. And of course, the last one, the MP3 experiment. Now here you have, red versus blue that was created. And the wonderfully fun thing is that with the MP3 experiment, all of the players who are playing, they hear the rules. So they're in on the joke. Yet all of the people who do not have that MP3 download, it looks like the most completely strange, random, synchronized thing that has ever happened. You might think, what kind of mind control is happening to these people? Interesting story. I remember partaking once in an MP3 experiment in Amsterdam. And it wasn't the big, showing with lightsabers and stuff like this. It was actually much more subtle. There was two groups, no clothing or anything. It was much more of a soundscape and reflective story as you walked around the plaza there in Amsterdam, Leidseplein. And you would do a couple of things, like you would look at the map for the bus a bit too long, or you might do a little hop sketch, in place. But the way it was set up, it was very subtle. So only those who had the MP3 experiment on actually saw what was happening. It wasn't this bombastic happening that everybody immediately understood was happening. It was actually much more of a secret or subtle experience that was going on, that only those who were aware knew what was happening. And here's the kicker of it. I remember, going around, and there was this homeless man who was sitting there, and he was looking at the way in which people were behaving, and he started saying, "What the hell is going on with everybody? What's going on here? These people are crazy. I don't understand. It's going nuts." It's like this guy who's sitting there, homeless. He's the only one who seemed to realize that people were reacting in some kind of synchronized, strange behavior. Oh yes, it was very illuminating participating in that happening. And that's what happenings can do. I'm not just talking about flash mobs or alternate reality game. No, I'm talking about Alan Krapow's, definition of the happening. So the first time that these kind of events, these kind of, simulacrums which were created, these fun, interesting exhibitions whereby the participant was part of the exhibit rather than just being a passive onlooker. This really happened way back in the 1900s. Now it's way back in the 1900s. Alan Krapow actually coined the term of the happening in the spring of 1957 at an art picnic at George Segal's farm. And he wanted to describe the art art pieces that were starting to emerge of these things, such as the tire exhibition here. Happenings were first appearing in print in the winter of 1959's issue of the Rutgers University undergraduate literary magazine Anthologist, where you started to see this breakdown start to happen between the viewer, the observer, as a participant in the art. Happenings are a form of participatory new media art emphasizing an interaction between the performer and the audience. Breaking the fourth wall between performer and spectator, it replaces criticism with support. So now, all of a sudden, as these art critics are going to the exhibition making a lot of money about saying, you know, oh, this is just so terrible, this art is nothing, oh, it stinks, da da da, right? Now, the artist flipped it on him and said, no, I'm sorry. Your participation was the problem, and that's why your experience and your review was enough, and because you did not participate fully in the experience of the art. So now the observer is gone, and the participant is now replacing that observer in that art piece. So rather than simply observing a work of art, now we are integrated and performing together along with it. We are a part of that happening. We are a part of that experience. So let's look at the rules of a happening as set forth by Alan Caprow. So there's a bunch of rules that he set forth. Now, these are more or less of a guide rather than a, struck in stone, carved in stone, set of rules. As artists, of course, you get a rule set and it's like, great, thanks, right? Kick it out of town. But it's good to know where to start with breaking those rules. So let's figure out the rules before we break them. First of all, one of the rules of the happening is it has to look as spontaneous as possible. Now, remember those couple of examples that we showed of the improv everywhere. It looked very spontaneous. It looked like these people all of a sudden out of nothing started doing this whole song and dance routine, right? So looking as spontaneous as possible. Short in duration is also key. I mean, you can't really have a flash mob that goes on for 3 days long. I guess you could, but it's kind of hard to keep up the momentum, I gotta say. Short in duration, that's also great because it makes it easily shareable and easily consumable, and it also allows you to really have some freedom with it too. Free of form restraints. So it doesn't matter whether you're doing an ATM applause, whether you're doing a freeze, or whether you're doing a giant lightsaber battle, right? These are all completely different forms of art, of activities, and yet they're all falling under this. So we're free from these form restraints, because that's one thing we can't have or put on artists is restraints of a form, because they're like, I got a better form, right? What are the next rules? Well, we have a focus on mass consumption. Now, this is really interesting. This focus on mass consumption is a real reflection of the time with the pop artists, the idea of mass production, mass communication, which has only increased over time with technology such as the internet, whereby now we have viral videos. I mean, that's a mass consumption right there. To be able to make a short video of one of these happenings and then share that on mass consumption, a 5-minute improv everywhere gets millions of views, right? That's great. From, all the way from Turkey to Argentina to, Malaysia. It doesn't matter, people are watching these short things and laughing and going, wow, this is great, look at this. It's focused on mass spontaneous participation, right? So it's the level in which to participate shouldn't be too high. I mean, all right, download an MP3. I think I can do that, right? And follow a couple of the instructions. Sounds good. Freeze in place for 20 minutes. Well, I don't know about 20 minutes. I'll give you 5. How's that? Yeah. So the things that are able to be done, make sure that it doesn't take a lot of mastery of skill in order to do. Make it something simple that most people can do, right? Location doesn't matter. Now, this is interesting too, because what you see is a lot of these happenings, a lot of these flash mobs are able to be done over multiple locations around the world. For instance, with the Michael Jackson tribute, where people started dancing, doing Michael Jackson flash mobs in cities all over the world. It didn't matter the city. These cities were all the way from Europe, Australia, America, South America, Middle East, you name it. So the location doesn't matter, right? So if you really look at what these rules are about, is really they're trying to say, okay, you don't have to do it inside. You don't have to do it outside. You're free from a lot of form. Just make sure it's short and people can join in, right? Now, there's also a focus on gaining attention via mass media, which is another reason why it is so good for virals and viral videos and Instagram posts and the internet that we have today, where we're just looking for these short, spontaneous, mass consumption clips. That's why, it was almost, we're going close to at least, 60, 70 years, ago, where, they figured this out and we're still just loving it, right? New and creative. Yeah, after you've seen a couple freezes, all right, it's been done. Move on, do a new happening. Figure out a new little game set in which can be played by many people, right? The dance thing, all right, it's been done. Move on, let's see. What else can you do? What else can you come up with as new and creative as one of these happenings? And finally, the last one, which is also rather, if on the rules, is apolitical. It shouldn't be political at all, although there will be some examples later on of some political happenings as well. So these are 9 different rules given by Alan Capral for the rules of a happening. I want you to make sure you look at it. I want you to make sure you understand them, because I might be putting them in a little puzzle quiz, right, later on. Okay, so let's look at a couple of these happenings that have been going on and look at these examples and see if they meet these criteria for Alan Capral's The Happening. First of all, we're going to look at the epic pillow fight in Amsterdam, the Netherlands. Now, yes, I was there. This is my photograph. I was in there with a pillow and trying to get a couple pictures as well. It was quite something to see literally hundreds of people downtown Amsterdam all going crazy with pillows. Now, the one thing I did not count on, which was kind of dumb, and as you can see in the picture, those who are allergic to feathers should not go to the epic pillow fight. So yeah, I went, but I was wearing a mask before it was in, just because I'm allergic to these dang feathers, right? So I was there masked up getting hit. Anyways, epic pillow fight of Amsterdam. People go with a pillow and just start hitting each other. Now let's look at these rules of the happening. Does it tick all of the different boxes of the rules of a happening? Well, it's spontaneous looking, right? It's short in duration. It's pretty free of form restraints. It didn't matter which pillow you had. It was definitely focused on mass consumption because everybody was there. Mass spontaneous participation, everyone's there. Gaining on media attention, some of my greatest pictures, as you can see, what a great pic came from that. It was new and creative pillow fight. I mean, come on. It wasn't political, and the location, it doesn't matter. You could have an epic pillow fight in your town. Right? So boom, 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 boom. There we go. Hit all 9 points of a happening. Not a flash mob, and happening. Let's move on, shall we? Now, the next one I want to look at is the White Dinner. That's right, the White Dinner in Munich, Germany. Now, this is something that happens typically once a year where everybody gets dressed up in all white and brings tables and chairs and cloths and the whole kit and caboodle, wine and plates and dishes, and they go and they sit in a park and they create a giant white dinner where everybody's in white and everybody's having this fabulous picnic with friends and stuff. So yeah, this is this a happening? Well, I don't know. Let's have a look if this is a happening or not. So the white dinner, checking out the rules of a happening, and we're going to go through them. First of all, does it look as spontaneous as possible? Wow. Looks, I don't know about spontaneous, but it looks pretty incredible. You know, all of a sudden all these people come in and set up this completely, you know, huge picnic, right? Is it short in duration? About as long as a meal. Free of form restraints? Well, you got to wear white. That's the only form restraint. So, you know, I'll give that one. Focus on mass consumption. Well, everybody's eating there, taking pictures, photographing. You know, I mean, talk about great Instagram photos. And, you know, focused on getting mass attention via mass media. Yeah, there's plenty of TikToks and Insta posts. I'm sure if you look for white dinner, you'll find it. It's focused on mass spontaneous participation. Well, if you're wearing white and you want to jump in, you know, all you have to do is grab a seat and you can basically sit down. So it's pretty easy to join. Location doesn't matter. They just happen to be doing it in Munich, Germany a lot. It's not political at all, and it is pretty new and creative, you know, a little white dinner party, right? So, rules of the happening. I mean, it seems to tick off all those boxes, I gotta say. Now, third one I want to show you is more of what's called an alternate reality game, okay? And this is called the Top Secret Dance-Off. And what would happen, it wasn't necessarily something that you would go to a place with a whole bunch of other people. No, this was more of that secret, remember that MP3, secret MP3 thing that I told you about? This is more like that, whereby people were playing a game whereby they would film themselves dancing in certain routines, right? You know, for instance, here we get flame rock at the crosswalk, whereby people would do these, you know, short little videos of them dancing and add it to the top secret dance-off, and then they would get, you know, different points and you know, badges, and you would work your way through, you know, this whole game with other people dancing all over the world. And yes, if you're wondering, I did do it too. But here we see, again, the rules of this happening. It doesn't have to be, you know, it can be asymmetrical in time, you know. It doesn't have to be all together. Nowhere does it say that it has to happen all together, because, I mean, it looks spontaneous as possible because people all over the world were filming these little dance parties. You know, they're short in duration. It was just one person doing a crazy walk on a sidewalk, right? You know, it was new and creative. The location totally didn't matter because people were doing it all over the world. It was focused on mass spontaneous participation because anybody all over the world could upload one of their dancing videos. And of course, it was also, you know, apolitical. It was just about dance, right? So, yeah, all of these different happenings are things I participated in. In fact, the video that I put up for the Top Secret Dance-Off, I'm going to give you a little show here. I mean, how's that for some moves, huh? Of course, this is just a short clip from a much longer little dance routine I did in my friend's apartment. So yeah, there we have some examples of the happenings. There we have some rule sets about which we can look at and see how these happenings can be constructed. We understand what the framework and what the models now are. Now we can start to figure out how do we create our own, which is going to be coming up in the next clip.